Pity this poor monster, manunkind not. Progress is a comfortable disease. Your victim, death and life safely beyond, plays with the bigness of his littleness. Electrons deify one razor blade into a mountain range. Lenses extend, unwish, through curving where when, till unwish returns on its unself. A world of made is not a world of born. Pity poor flesh and trees, poor stars and stones, but never this fine specimen of hyper-magical ultra-omnipotence. We doctors know a hopeless case if, listen, there's a hell of a good universe next door. Let's go. Why must itself up every of a park anus stick some quote statue unquote to prove that a hero equals any jerk who was afraid to dare to answer no? Quote citizens unquote might otherwise forget to err as human, to forgive divine, that if the quote state unquote says kill, killing is an act of Christian love. Nothing in 1944 AD can stand against the argument of military necessity. Generalissimo E. And Echo answers, there is no appeal from reason. Freud. You pays your money and you doesn't take your choice. Ain't freedom grand? Next to, of course, God, America, I love you. Land of the pilgrims and so forth, oh, say, can you see, by the dawn's early, my country 'tis of centuries come and go, and are no more, what of it we should worry, in every language, even deaf and dumb, oh, thy sons acclaim your glorious name, by gory, by jingo, by gee, by gosh, by gum. Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic, happy dead, who rushed like lions to the roaring slaughter? They did not stop to think. They died instead. Then shall the voice of liberty be mute? He spoke and drank rapidly a glass of water. My sweet old etc. Aunt Lucy, during the recent war, could, and what is more, did tell you just what everybody was fighting for. My sister Isabel created hundreds and hundreds of socks, not to mention shirts, fleet-proof, ear warmers, etc., wristers, etc. My mother hoped that I would die, etc. Bravely, of course. My father used to become hoarse, talking about how it was a privilege. And if only he could. Meanwhile, myself, etc., lay quietly in the deep mud, etc., dreaming, etc., of your smile, eyes, knees, and of your etc. Plato told him he couldn't believe it. Jesus told him he wouldn't believe it. Lao Tzu certainly told him. And General, yes, ma'am, Sherman, and even believe it or not, you told him, I told him, we told him, he didn't believe it. No, sir. It took a nipponized bit of the old 6th Avenue L in the top of his head to tell him. What got him was nothing. And nothing's exactly what anyone living or somebody dead, like even a poet, could hardly express. What I mean is, what knocked him over wasn't, for instance, the knowing your whole, yes, goddamned life is a flop, or even to feel how everything dreamed and hoped and prayed for months and weeks and days and years and nights and forever is less than nothing, which would have been something. What got him was nothing. Buffalo Bill's defunct, who used to ride a water smooth silver stallion and break 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pigeons just like that. Jesus, he was a handsome man. And what I want to know is, how do you like your blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? Dying is fine, but death, oh baby, I wouldn't like death if death were good. For when instead of stopping to think, you begin to feel of it, dying's miraculous. Why? Because dying is perfectly natural. Perfectly, putting it mildly, lively. But death is strictly scientific and artificial and evil and legal. We thank thee, God Almighty, for dying. forgive us, O life, the sin of death. Nobody loses all the time. I had an uncle named Saul, who was a born failure. And nearly everybody said he should have gone into vaudeville, perhaps, because my Uncle Saul could sing "McCann, he was a diver" on Christmas Eve, like hell itself, which may or may not account for the fact that my Uncle Saul indulged in that possibly most inexcusable of all, to use a highfalutin phrase, luxuries. That is, or to wit, farming. And be it needlessly added, my Uncle Saul's farm failed because the chickens ate the vegetables. So my Uncle Saul had a chicken farm till the skunks ate the chickens. When my Uncle Saul had a skunk farm. But the skunks caught cold and died. And so my Uncle Saul imitated the skunks in a subtle manner, or by drowning himself in the water tank. But somebody who'd given my Uncle Saul a Victor Victrola and records while he lived presented to him, upon the auspicious occasion of his decease, a scrumptious, not to mention splendiferous, funeral with tall boys in black gloves and flowers and everything. And I remember we all cried like the Missouri when my Uncle Saul's coffin lurched, because somebody pressed a button and down went my Uncle Saul and started a worm farm. One winter afternoon, at the magical hour when is becomes if, a bespangled clown standing on 8th Street handed me a flower. Nobody, it's safe to say, observed him but myself. And why? Because without any doubt he was whatever, first and last, most people fear most. A mystery for which I've no word except alive. That is, completely alert and miraculously whole, with not merely a mind and a heart, but unquestionably a soul. By no means funereally hilarious or otherwise democratic, but essentially poetic or ethereally serious. A fine, not a coarse clown. No mob, but a person. And while never saying a word, who was anything but dumb, since the silence of himself sang like a bird. Most people have been heard screaming for international measures that render hell rational. I thank heaven somebody's crazy enough to give me a daisy. Anyone lived in a pretty old town with up so floating many bells down? Spring, summer, autumn, winter, he sang his din, he danced his did. Women and men, both little and small, cared for anyone, not at all. They sowed their resent, they reaped their same, sun, moon, stars, rain. Children guessed, but only a few, and down they forgot as up they grew. Autumn, winter, spring, summer, that no one loved him more by more. When by when and tree by leaf, she laughed his joy, she cried his grief. Brewed by snow and stir by still, anyone's any was all to her. Someone's married their everyone's, laughed their crimes and did their dance, sleep, wake, hope, and then they said their nevers, they slept their dream, stars, rain, sun, moon, and only the snow can begin to explain how children are apt to forget to remember, with up so floating many bells down. One day anyone died, I guess, and no one stooped to kiss his face. Busy folk buried them side by side, little by little and was by was, all by all and deep by deep, and more by more they dream their sleep. No one and anyone, earth by April, wish by spirit, and if by yes. Anyone lived in a pretty old town, with up so floating many bells down. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, he sang his did, he danced his did.